All right. Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. We're going to get into our webinar now. We've got a very interesting topic. Title of the webinar is Boost Revenue Through a Better Pre-Arrival Engagement Plan. So just to kind of set the stage for this conversation, let's start off with the simple fact that guest acquisition is very hard. In the good times, and we're not in the good times right now. Guest acquisition was this marketing battle for eyeballs, while revenue managers kind of play a game of chicken to see how high they can push rates. And in the good times, if your asset manager thinks that you are winning, it's because you have great market share, great occupancy, and a high ADR. All of which, by the way, are KPIs that are reflections of guest acquisition. But we are not in the good times right now. Right now, your occupancy probably is very low. Success now is being measured in actually much simpler terms, as in how much revenue can we generate, period. In these COVID times, every dollar counts, and the ancillary revenue sources now demand our full attention. We need to start thinking like retailers. We're thinking about increasing our customers' cart value. We're getting them in the door with maybe a lower than what we desired rate. Now we've got to make up that revenue. Guest engagement is all about encouraging guests to enrich their experience. That's true. But your short-term goal is to generate additional revenue, and your long-term goal is to generate great reviews and return business, which will generate more revenue. Today, we're going to be talking to some hotel technology experts about how you can set up a pre-arrival engagement plan that will serve both you and your guests very well. We're going to look at what is required, what is recommended, and we'll discuss some new technologies that are making engagement easier and in some cases automated. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to introduce our panelists. So let's just kind of go around the table. Michael Edinger, can you give us a quick introduction?
Yep. Hi, my name's Michael. I work with SiteMinder. I've been with the company for 8 years. The company itself was founded in 2006. We provide distribution and booking engine and other solutions to hotels to help, as you say, boost revenue for them. We've got about 35,000 customers globally across 160 plus countries, and we're transacting over 100 million reservations through our system. So it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Warren, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, good day, everyone. I'm Warren Dehan. I'm the president of Maestro PMS. Maestro is a PMS company, business for over 40 years, by my father. Specialize in the full-service hotel and resort market. Multi-property is a strength of ours, and so we not only with our PMS, but our integrated sales and catering, club and spa, online booking engine, our guest engagement platform, a myriad of very happy to be here. Thank you to Jos and all for organizing this and this illustrious crew of cohorts that I'm a part of today.
Thanks, Michael. Warren. Warren, just a quick note. We are having a little bit of issues with your audio. I'm not sure if it's connection related or microphone related, but you might want to check that. Michael Bennett, can you give us a quick introduction?
Sure, Paul. Thanks for having me. Michael Bennett. I'm the CMO at Cendyn. I've been there now 5 years in the industry on both sides for over 20. At Cendyn, we're really focused on the revenue generation across both our sales, marketing, and revenue management. And I'm excited to be here and share some thoughts.
Great, thank you. Excuse me, Daan de Bruijn.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Daan de Bruijn, and I'm the co-founder of Bookboost. And Bookboost is a all-in-one digital communication platform, and it really enables the hotelier to build direct guest relationships. So I'm really excited to talk more about that, about guest engagement today. And thanks a lot to you, ROOMDEX, for the initiative.
Well, thank you, Daan. And I'm sorry for once again destroying your last name. That's my mistake. And last but not least, Schaap, if you can give us a quick introduction, that'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Schaap. I am in this business for a very long time. I started my career in hotels, then worked for Microsystems for almost 18 years, where I was in charge of the development of Opera, PMS, CRS, CIS, and so on, all these Opera products. In 2013, I started the Stay in Touch PMS, sold that in 2018. And most recently, I started a new company called ROOMDEX, where we focus on automation and room upgrades, accelerate revenue, and that kind of stuff. That'll be me.
Excellent, thank you. So before we get into the questions, I just want to let the audience know that we will be taking questions when we can throughout the discussion. So there is a questions functionality in Zoom or chat. We will be trying to look at both, and we will try to get the questions as we can. And we encourage it. So let's get right into it. I'd like to start with Michael Bennett. Tell me, from your perspective, what are the fundamental tools required to create an effective pre-arrival engagement plan, in your opinion?
Sure, good question. So we really believe you have to have a good CRM, and you have to have good, rich, clean data. I think it's also important to understand that a CRM is a guest engagement tool, and all teams in the hotel need to use it. It's not just a marketing tool. I think it's kind of a common misconception. And I think also, personalization was a buzzword, a couple of years ago. I think even in 2019, it was a skipped mega trend, but we're still not great at it. We talked about it a lot, but we really haven't adapted it. And when you're thinking about creating a pre-arrival experience, I think personalization is key. So a couple thoughts there. One, you have to understand how your guest wants to be communicated with. It's not necessarily email, right? It could be SMS, could be WeChat, whatever their preference is. You need to understand that and make sure that you're communicating with the way that they want to be communicated. Cadence is really important. So, we see resorts that have a longer cadence. For example, it could be a 30-day, a 2-week out, 7-day, day of. But again, based on your property size, the amenities you offer, probably determines the how much there. But in today's age, I think, there's no such thing as over communication. Things are changing too fast in terms of travel and arrival. And guests want to be over communicated with. We see engagement rates have gone up significantly in the last 18 months with all types of communication. And then, I think on that piece, changes. So if you have changes, you have to communicate early and often. You don't want that surprise and disappointment at the front desk. You want the surprise and delight, right? And I think, to that point, most importantly, this is the whole team effort around a pre-arrival, is that the guest agent has to know. If you spend all the time and effort to communicate early and often and personalize it, and then you get to the desk and say, hey, I'm checking in. Have you ever stayed with us before, right? There's no guest recognition piece. It's failed. So I think all the teams, the data's there. You have to leverage it and you have to execute against it.
So you had mentioned a lot of great things here. You were specifically talking about you want to communicate with them how they want to be communicated with. Yeah. That's not always easy to find out. I mean, how is that something that CRMs are currently sort of recording, or is that the new? You said in the last 18 months we've seen an increased cadence in communications. How should a hotelier approach this? Because a lot of times they're only getting an email to begin with.
Yeah. So, guest preference system loyalty is one way you can do it, right? Can't be afraid to ask that question and capture the opt-in at the desk. Again, it used to be, can I have your email, right? And, you know, that's still a very coveted asset. One of the most important things you can capture, I guess, is an email. But, you know, ask the question, right? Do you, would you prefer that we text you, right? Do you want an SMS instead? Do you not want email, especially once they're on property, right? Much easier to engage back and forth two-way when you capture. So you have to ask the question. So there's lots of opportunities to do that in the booking process, survey during pre-arrival cadence, and then on property once the guest arrives.
Right. So, I think that, when it comes to pre-arrival communications, we all are first kind of thinking about email, because that is like it's like a validation data piece that we use in the reservation process. So it's something that we have. However, they are a bit of one way in terms of engagement. Daan, your company takes a very holistic view of guest engagement from the entire experience. You're really into driving two-way engagement. Can you expand on that a little bit? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think Michael had some really good points already on that in his answer, right? About that, it's a lot about personalization and making the guest feel like a unique individual, really. So in terms of engagement, what we actually see today in the market is that there is a disconnect between the guest and the hotel, where the guest often feels overlooked at, or they're not really feeling involved, especially not in the pre-arrival stage. And they rather feel sort of, when they come to the hotel, unfortunately, feel treated like sort of like a number more than a person, really. And the hotelier, on the other side, is expected to provide great service with limited resources. And what I mean with that is not only in terms of personnel, but also lack of guest data often, and also lack of ways to actually reach the guest, and actually reach the guest in a way that resonates, like in a way that you can really get your message across. And I mean, that's really the reason for existence for our business. So what we try to do is to close that gap and build a bridge and connect the guest and the hotelier again, so that you can really build a relationship and get to know your guest as a unique individual. And that's really key for engagement, because what you could do then, for instance, is actually ask your guest, just as an example, like for their purpose of travel. And then some guests might select like, I'm coming for business. Some might select, I'm coming for leisure. Some might even select like, I'm coming for leisure and I'm celebrating my couple's anniversary, just as an example. So what some of our customers do is, for the business guests, they send a message based on upon that they know that about their business launch. If they have like, for instance, like, hey, just so you know, like, we have a business launch and the Wi-Fi is great. We have monitors if you need them, and the coffee is on us. But for the couple that celebrates their anniversary, like, you could send an automated yet personalized message where it goes like, hey, by the way, I reckon you're celebrating your couple's anniversary, so would you appreciate a bottle of wine on your room, perhaps? So then you can create a revenue opportunity and a great experience for your guests, really. So it's really about like sort of that two-way, because then you can get to know your guests and you can discover what they really would appreciate, and based upon that, handle, and then actually close the gap. Because today still 80% of hotels, they feel they provide a good service, whereas only 8% of guests usually agree. So there's unfortunately this gap, but that's also what we can fix with like a new way of messaging guests and a way of really creating engagement that counts, basically.
Let me ask you, like, to what degree is there I mean, it sounds great, and if you have the tool, it's great. Is this require a lot of overhead in terms of labor to keep up with this communication?
Yeah, so the fine line is that by automating flows, you can be quite efficient, and in fact, even in some cases, be more efficient than not using messaging or communication. Because your guests will have questions either way. And by sending relevant information to your guests proactively, they don't even have to ask. But of course, also by generating engagement, you will always, and you should be available for those questions that guests might have that you can tackle with automation, right? And like we always say, or we recommend, or this is how we view that it's the best practice, is to not basically try to automate all communication. You can automate as long as it doesn't compromise on personalization. And yeah, it does indeed, in some cases, generate new questions that you might not get if you don't sort of invite your guests to ask. However, those are also opportunities to engage with your guests and also turn into opportunities. And when you create like an experience for your guest that's personalized and perhaps a little unexpected for the guest, that's where you can really create memories, and that's where you will be remembered as the hotel.
Right. Yeah. And quite frankly, the more they're engaged, I would imagine, the more they're inclined to try to, enrich their stay through maybe additional ancillary revenue opportunities.
Precisely. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just want to remind everybody again, please feel free to post your questions and we will try to get to them as best we can. So Warren, 40 years in the business, you were running a property management system, and the PMS is the hub of all guest data, basically. It's where everyone's connections, Dan's, Yas's, everybody's systems are connecting to the PMS. So I'm kind of interested in two different questions. One is, like, what do you see the role is in terms of PMS data and guest engagement? That's number one. And then I think more broadly, I think that I'm probably most interested in just your perspective based on your years in the business of how this concept of pre-arrival engagement has evolved, and maybe what technology's role in that is.
Certainly, and hopefully my audio is a little better. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, let's hope that holds together. Okay. Certainly we know that the PMS holds a wealth from original inquiries to the reservation whole guest process. But the type of data we hold, we know lead times, so we know how much time we have prior to guests arriving to provide an opportunity to get some revenue.
But we're having some more audio problems, unfortunately. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Try reconnecting. I think
device related or connection related.
Hearing me right now.
It kind of fades in and out. It's a little strange.
Not much I can do about it. My connection's very clear here. I can hear you clearly. I can see you all clearly.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's no video problems at all.
Maybe, it's still breaking up?
Yeah.
Momentary lapse, or?
Are you using an external mic?
No, I went from an external to this. Why don't I dial in from my phone, maybe go on with the next question. I'll dial back in and we can hear it.
Well, that sounds good. We can, I think that we can, if maybe you can, I'm not sure if you can dial in or not. We'll try that. In the meantime, Michael Edinger. I'm sorry, I'm messing. Edinger. I'm sorry, I have a typo on my notes. So SiteMinder's App Store is kind of like at the center of a lot of new guest engagement tools. So again, your company is at this unique perspective of being able to kind of being connected to a lot of these different systems. You're seeing them in your marketplace. What trends are you seeing and what is showing success?
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, we were doing our exchange well before the pandemic had hit, because our philosophy was we want hoteliers to be empowered, by various systems, whatever matters to their business. We didn't want them to have the limitations. We wanted them to be able to connect the systems that mattered to their business. Now, once lockdowns and started happening, and once restrictions started happening, and we started to see that, there was definitely something wrong. People weren't able to travel. Hotels were struggling to fill rooms, things like that. We started to see a trend with a lot of what we now call in our store the contactless apps. The apps for guest messaging, to help manage that narrative. You know, we've always done the upselling tools, but, you know, the keyless entry, those kind of things where guests were able to still, if they had to travel, they were still able to engage with the hotel without having to necessarily go to the front desk or go into queues or mix with other people. And we're seeing a huge uptake in those apps for chats. And as I said, guest messaging, securely sending documents across. That's, you know, even though we do connect a lot of things, you know, like I mentioned, the door locking system and all that kind of things within our app store, that's the thing that has really taken off the most, is this whole guest engagement whereby, you know, we're managing their comfort and their ability to travel without necessarily having to feel like they're endangering themselves. They can communicate with the hotel and get everything done without waiting in queue, and service departments, that kind of thing.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think that kind of dovetails nicely with what Michael Bennett was saying about the increased cadence over the last 18 months of, you know, maybe this COVID thing is related to that. And maybe it's one of those, it was a transformation of the interaction between guest and hotel that is going to have some staying power too. Maybe people are now used to this. If it's been increasing for over the last 18 months. You know, one of the things, and I want to stay with you, Michael, on the next question. One of the things that I'm very curious about in terms of the practicality of engaging with guests is the OTAs. Okay, so the OTAs are sometimes seen as a necessary evil. There is this sense of, you know, who owns the customer, quote unquote. You know, that they're an effective part of every distribution strategy, but unfortunately the hotels just don't necessarily have the same access to guest information prior to arrival as those who book, say, direct. You know, Michael, from your perspective, you know, how can hotels fold these OTA guests into their larger pre-arrival plan? You know, what's your perspective on this conundrum?
Yeah, I do want to say, I mean, I don't feel that, you know, necessary evil is a bit strong, I think, you know, because, I mean, honestly speaking, you know, the OTAs are great at helping the hotels market to guests they may not otherwise get, you know. Sure. And there's nothing stopping the hotels from marketing to these guests on arrival, you know, really painting that holistic, you know, experience for their guests and making sure they're taken care of, saying, hey, you know what, book with us direct next time. And, you know, they'll have those profiles in place to do so, hopefully. I mean, I think that the main issue when we talk about how they don't necessarily have access to this advanced, you know, guest information and things like that, it's really key that they are using a system that's feeding that into their property management system. I believe it's important that, you know, it didn't used to be the case. Sometimes people would just have, you know, look, I manually go into booking.com, I put some rooms there and I put some in Expedia and that fills my rooms. Okay, well, when we talk about access to guest details and information, you know, you've got to have a system in place that's feeding that into your property management system, that's securely sending all of that data in so that you can come up with an engagement plan and you can use that information that's going into your system to maximize that.
Yeah, Daan, what do you see as some good, you know, best practices in order to reach these OTA guests? Anything from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And Michael, you gave, I believe, a great introduction to what I would like to add to that, because I mean, it's so important. And obviously, like more OTA dominant hotels struggle more to build direct guest relationships than hotels with a higher percentage of direct bookings. But regardless, when you don't receive neither the personal email address of the OTA booker nor the phone number, right? It's really difficult to build a relationship after that the booking has been generated. And that's so important for various reasons. And I mean, as a hotel, you always have the competitive advantage to create the experience. I mean, you're not traveling to the OTA, you're traveling to the hotel, right?
Right, sure.
So there's a great opportunity there, but then it's about finding a solution on interacting also with those OTA guests early on in the journey, so that you can start to build and create that great experience that then if next time the guest comes back, they would want to book with you directly. And that's just one thing. But in general, when you build a relationship also with OTA bookers, they will become loyal to you as the hotel and not so much to the OTA. And actually, we've seen that when you do interact, and there are solutions for this, there are solutions to still reach the OTA booker, regardless if this guest data is hidden when you get the booking. So there are solutions for that. And when you interact with guests, then they're on average 14% happier compared to hotels that don't. And also guests are 9 times more likely to interact. So for whatever purpose that could be, I mean, whether it's important for you to get some feedback, or perhaps to gather some more reviews, or to generate more revenue opportunities, guests will be much more involved in your brand. So it's critical, I believe, that for any hotel who wants to build a brand, that they find solutions to also interact with the OTA bookers. And fortunately enough, there are solutions for that today.
So it's what you're saying is, even on property guest engagement, guest engagement during the stay is going to, put you in a much better position for, that return business being direct, potentially.
Precisely, and also already in the pre-arrival, there's such a field of opportunities really to get to know your guests and to already start to build that experience, so that guests can get really excited and that the whole trip becomes more of a broad experience rather than just sleeping at the hotel, right? And that your hotel becomes more of a destination rather than just a place to sleep. And you can really accomplish that by interacting and communicating with your guests, because that's then what you create basically.
Excellent. So I want to go see if we can reconnect with Warren. I think he's connecting via audio. Hi, Warren.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, sort of. We'll give it a try. So we were. We'll go back to you, and I wanted to pick up where we left off with you. We were talking about the role of the PMS data and also trends that you've seen over the years.
Yeah, so thank you. Now, hopefully this sound is a little clearer.
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Okay, good. Leave it to the PMS guy to try and sort out a problem last second.
Technology specialist. This is good.
Yeah. So certainly, thank you for the question. Look, we know that the PMS is really the consolidator of all the data, whether reservations coming through the OTAs, through the booking engine, directly over through the reservation center, over the phone. And so we have all that data, and we continue to build on that data through the guest experience process. So as guests book additional amenities, or don't book, and maybe we have an opportunity to leverage the data. We know the lead time they're booking. We know if they're a single, a couple, a family, if they're with a group. We have all this information. Oftentimes we do capture the email address. Sometimes we get a mobile phone. So it does provide the information with which to engage with the guest. But on the other hand, the other elements we have is this ability to reach out to the guest, through that, booking, boosting the engagement. We can set up, and many of our customers will do this, they'll set up multiple pre-arrival emails. So going on to your second question, the data is there, but how you use that data is the more critical piece. So we have an analytics engine that's available in the PMS. And I think most PMSs will provide some type of analytics engine, so that the marketing team, the revenue management team, whoever's doing that job for that property can mine that data to figure out who's coming, what do they have booked, what don't they have booked. So for example, we may have a spa resort, and we've got a bunch of room bookings, and the spa is really not getting the pickup we want. We can leverage the analytics to find out which guests have booked room but haven't booked a spa, and then do a targeted campaign to try and boost some spa activity. And we can do that in a number of ways. You can certainly lead people to your booking engine through an email to say, come on and book some other amenities. Maybe it's a spa, maybe it's a dining reservation, maybe it's golf. But you can do that in a staged approach. So, it can be overwhelming for a guest to receive an email after they made a room reservation, or even through the room reservation process, to have to book all the amenities. Again, most of our customers are in the resort space, but a lot of this will appeal to sort of corporate downtown properties. And so we have seen success in our customer base by spoon feeding the amenities. So they've got the room reservation, that's out of the way. Rather than bombarding the guest with an email that might have way too many options for them to absorb, you target something. So maybe it is, hey, you've booked your room, how about a dinner reservation? Or how about enjoying our spa? And then, that creates some appeal, and we've seen some pretty good traction on that. And then a staged approach would be another pre-arrival email. And with Maestro, and I'm sure with others, you can have as many of these as you wish. And so then you could pick up the next email, which would be, don't forget to sign up for your mobile key. And by the way, did you prearrange parking, or did you make your dinner reservation, and so forth. And so, we have customers who are leveraging the data in that way and using the tools we have in that facility. The other aspect is with the booking engine, many booking engines, ours included, allows you to book not only the room, but the spa and the dining and the activities, whether it's a bicycle rental or a wine tasting tour or whatever it may be. There's an opportunity at the booking stage to do that. And if that's missed, to send those emails and have them come back into the booking process to pick up some of those additional amenities. And so, we're seeing customers use our products in that way, and they're getting good results. But the analytics is certainly helping for trying to drill down into creating a more personalized experience for the guest.
So you mentioned something that I wanted to. There was actually a question that I saw earlier. Michael, I think you answered it. Somebody commented that the OTAs don't want to share customer data because they want to keep ownership. They have their own customer service. So they keep the data to do their own marketing communication, and therefore to not want the customer to be overwhelmed. Now, Warren, you just mentioned something about, well, we want to make sure that we don't overwhelm the customer in a single email. And, I think that this is, and then Michael says, well, people are there's more and more communications going on there. Dan is like, we need to have more engagement, not less. So I guess, maybe Yas, can you talk to this point a little bit about, I think the question is the nature of how you communicate with it. Is it too many emails, or is it the nature of what is in each email? Like I'm using email as a catch-all phrase for whatever the communication is done. So.
Yeah, I hear a very interesting trend throughout this webinar. I started off with Michael Bennett saying, more communication is better. Daan said the same thing, and Warren also, I think, adds on to that. If the communication is targeted, so if it's focused on one or two topics, and it's related to the stay of the guest, multiple or excessive, maybe excessive is the wrong word, but number of communications may not be a bad thing at all. In fact, from what I'm hearing, it actually sounds to be a good thing. I'm curious to hear what Michael Bennett has to say a bit more about that. But I think in general, all of us brought Daan, Warren, and Michael Bennett brought up the same thing. An email with too much information is not a good email, and multiple emails with targeted information or offers may be a better solution, maybe even over different channels from that point of view. And then what I just read on the OTA question from one of our attendees, I think OTAs actually are accessible by third parties such as us, ROOMDEX, Bookboost, Cendyn, and so on. There is this email alias that both Booking and Expedia have that allows you to send emails to the OTA guests. You still don't own the guest, but once you get the emails to the guests, you can include links that can open up offer pages or all kinds of information pages where you can also obtain more information about the at that point still OTA guest. And once they actually check in, you can continue to further that. So I think, yeah, I'm curious. I'm actually interesting to hear the opinions of Michael, Bennett, Warren, and Daan, because when I talk to a lot of hoteliers, they say, we don't want to have too many emails. But from what I hear, a good amount of emails at our target can actually really benefit the overall guest engagement, the overall guest experience, and increase revenue. So Michael, Bennett, what is your thought there?
Me, it comes down to personalization. So, we think about it, if I'm a golfer and my wife likes the spa and we're traveling up north from San Diego to Orange County for the weekend, and the hotel knows that it's just me and my wife coming, no kids, don't send me an email that offers me Disneyland tickets, right? Send me an email that says, hey, when you arrive, we've got this offer for golf, this for spa, and here's a nice dinner for you and your wife after, right? Like, I've told you that I'm coming, I'm doing these things. Make sure it's personalized, right? The data is there. You just have to leverage the data. And when we see that happen with our hotels around the globe, doesn't matter the size of the hotel or the number of offerings they have, you see increased engagement in terms of open rate and click through, and ultimately see the ancillary revenue go up. It's not rocket science. You just have to take the time to do it, design the strategy, and ensure that you're collecting that data. If you do that, it'll yield results. We see it time and time again.
Yeah, totally. And if I may add to that, actually, like, guests really appreciate if you think alongside them. So if you can figure out what your guests want, to Michael's point, of course, you shouldn't bombard them with not relevant communication, right? So keywords are really being relevant and also adding value. So when you can surprise guests and add value in each message, then you will really see that guests keep engaged. So what we do is we enable the hotelier to ask the guests on which channel they prefer communicating, because for some messaging, you might prefer email. For other messaging, you might prefer more instant channels, especially when you're coming closer to check-in and during the stay. And if you communicate on a channel that the guest has chosen to want to communicate on, already the engagement goes up a lot. And then if each message is value adding and relevant, you will see that guests keep engaged. And by measuring like when guests opt out, because it's also very important that you give the chance to the guest to get out of it if they don't appreciate it, you can really measure per message like what the response is. And by like making a strategy, also to Michael's point, like start somewhere, make sure you can see what it does to the guest, ask for feedback, measure it, and then up on time you can improve and improve. And overall, like guests really appreciate it. So there is a general sense of like not wanting to overwhelm guests, and of course it comes from a good intention, but once done properly, it's actually appreciated. So that's really where the fine line sits.
So do you think if one of the plans would be, 3 days before arrival, you send a very relevant email that only talks about, for example, a room upgrade, the guest purchases that, and then the next day you send another email that talks about, let's assume Schulman Hotel has a spa, the guests can buy, because it's a weekend stay, 2 people, so presumably husband and wife, you can offer a spa and they buy that. So if you offer every day something that is relevant, but it's also clear in the message what the message is about. So it's not about the hotel, the environment, the world, and an upsell. No, it's only about the offering that you want to sell. Yeah. Is that what you're saying there?
Yeah, totally. And just one example of one of our customers in the Netherlands. It's at the beach just outside of Dehan. And it's a concept where they want their guests to basically make use of the facility, stay there as much as they can, and so on. And they do everything to sort of create an effortless experience for the guests. And that includes parking. So they rent this quite big parking lot that costs a lot. And before it wasn't really get used much. And it was a huge cost. So they used to send like a pre-arrival email, just with sort of almost like a brochure, you know, with all the things in once. And it doesn't really work. And also guests don't really think about parking when they make a booking. It's just too detailed. They don't think about that. So what they figured out by sending a message exactly at the right time, basically before the departure of the guest, on a more instant channel that you actually read and open directly, and not just later in your email if you forget about it, and send that at the right time when you're about to leave, to only the segment where it's likely that those guests will travel by car. So you can do that based on geographic location. Then the pickup is really high because at that moment you need it as a guest. So it's actually, it doesn't feel like an upsell for the guest, but it more feels like that the hotel is really thinking about you and thinking for you almost. And that adds to the experience. Plus it generates the opportunity for the hotel to actually sell that service. And ever since, they are maximizing that facility. So it's really about finding, like, I think that's the sort of the common understanding, right? Like finding the right timing, finding a relevant message, like thinking for the guest. And that's where really the magic happens, when you figure those things out.
So Jas, I want to, you know, we're talking about, like, if I book and it's 2 months away, there's lots of opportunities to keep on communicating and sending things. But sometimes I don't have that time. And quite frankly, sometimes, as you know, if I'm just like getting into this pre-engagement plan, I want to start with the stuff that's the most important, maybe not to the guest, but to the hotel. Like, where should the hotel be focusing in terms of prioritization? Because it's great to talk about, it's great to talk about, like, third part, like, outside activities and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, we're also ultimately trying to serve the revenue purposes of the hotel. So where should they be focusing?
I mean, I think that's a very good question, because I think it depends in what steps of the journey the guest is. The further away from arrival, the less important I think it is to sell things that you do at the property. You can do those, you can sell those once the guest is at the property or getting very close to arrive, because that's when the guest starts to think about, what am I going to do while I'm at property? So those things also have a high cost. Like if you offer a spa, or you offer breakfast, or you offer a champagne, all kinds of stuff that you need to deliver into the room that has a high cost price. The actual margin that you make on that upsell is very small. So I would start early in the journey of the guest to get to the hotel. I would start early on with room upgrades, potentially selling early arrival and late departure. And late departure, I would actually wait until the guest is also in the hotel, because that's when that becomes relevant. But the selling of higher margin items that require little or no effort to actually fulfill is, I think, especially right now, key for hotels to work on. And we see on a regular basis that people are very easily into buying room upgrades these days, especially now the pricing of suites or medium rooms is much lower than it normally is. People like to stay in a room a little longer, so the buying of an early arrival and late departure is very easy to achieve. And people are actually willing to pay for that, because especially right now with all the social distancing and all these rules, staying in a room is for many people a safe place and still a nice way of having their time outside of their normal home. So I would definitely begin the process of communication with the guest more about how can we make the stay itself more attractive by trying to offer better rooms, early arrival. And then as you get closer to arrival, also include some of these, let's say, stay enhancements, but be aware that those are, yes, they may generate high amount of revenue, but they're very low in margin. So I would definitely focus right now on items around room product, because those give the highest margin.
So I'm going to stay on this topic of driving revenue a little bit more. So CBRE, the real estate company, CBRE Hotels Research, produced a study that while during the preceding months in the pandemic, and I think we're talking about this past fall, I think it was August, September, October, revenue for hotels, not surprisingly, fell, but ancillary guest revenue actually grew by 26%. So this is one for Michael Edinger. Like, from your perspective, how do you account for this? Is it that look, hotels are desperate, they're low on occupancy, they're lowering rates, and then your average traveler is like saying, hey, you know, with a room rate of $110, I'm happy to buy some more extra things? Or is there something else going on?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that's part of it, but also if you consider the type of guests that were traveling during this time, you know, it was in many regions, it was down to essential travel for work, or it was for, you know, people that couldn't avoid travel. They have to go and they have to, you know, key workers who were staying in hotels, you know, it was that kind of mentality whereby, well, we can't go out to eat. We can't go out to do these things. So if there's F&B in the hotels, right, they're getting it at the hotels. They were delivering that to the room. So I think that what we were finding was, yeah, exactly. What we were finding before was that they're ordering more at the hotel where they are to keep themselves safe and other people safe just by doing it all from one place.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Dan, here's a question for you. We've been talking about, oh, there's lots of different ways you can communicate with the guests. Again, let's get focused on revenue. Is there one that's better for or triggering a sale of some sort, a revenue driving sale than the other? So, you know, like I like to think, well, you know, a graphic call to action on an email may be more enticing than a text, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe a text is more personal, and therefore they're going to be more likely to click on that link. What, in your perspective, what is the better method for generating revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, there's no right or wrong really. And on sort of a high level, it's the best to actually ask that question sort of to the guest and ask the guest on which channel they prefer communicating. Because once you do that, guests expect that communication comes through those channels, and they've already made a decision themselves. So if you then send them an offer after, or anywhere in the journey really, then they're more likely to engage on that because they expect it. So it's really about setting the right expectations. And then the channel doesn't matter as such. It does matter per guest, of course, because each has their own preferences. And it's really like the main thing is to figure that out. And it depends a lot, like also just how some of our customers use various channels to just make that a little clearer, because of course also more administrative messages, let's say like the booking confirmation and invoices and so on, are expected by email, but other messages are perhaps more expected on more instant channels. And like some of our customers, what they do is on Google Maps, they prepare like a map with all sort of like the local hidden gems, like all the cool spots in the city, for instance, to discover. And when the guest comes to the hotel, they send that just before check-in to get them excited, and they remind them again about it after check-in during the stay, like after asking how they like the room, for instance, and giving them some inspiration on what they could be doing in the city. And guests really appreciate that. And that's a message that works better on WhatsApp or SMS because it's more instant, and you bring your phone with you, and it's sort of more accessible like that. And then you open Google Maps and you can go to all those locations, and guests really, really appreciate it actually, and they get super excited. And just as a small anecdote, what sometimes happens, but this doesn't happen a lot, but is that guests get so excited and they're out in the city and they're enjoying and they're going to all the bars, and then it has happened that guests actually lose their wallet and they get a little bit too excited perhaps, and they get into trouble. But then because the hotel is sort of their local friend, they ask the hotel to help them, and they would actually ask the hotel to order a taxi for them and get them home. And that's really like, yeah, that's golden, because the guests will always remember that. And then the hotel becomes more of like a local friend rather than like a place to just sleep. And regardless of the channels, like these will always be evolving, but it's sort of like figuring out what works best on what channel, and mostly to ask the guest so that you actually are where your guests are, basically.
So I wanted to jump over to a question I thought was interesting that was posed by the audience. And and I think that this is a valid question. Thinking about the complexity of managing content, e.g., like dining offers, or kind of the content that's going to be going into these engagement points. This is a question for Warren and/or Michael Bennett. You know, what's the best way to manage this content? You know, are we just going to push people back to the website where we've listed all that content? Is this sitting in the PMS? Is this sitting in your CRM somehow? Like, what is your CRM tapping into a special separate database where you can pull in content blocks? I think, because the truth is, as personalized as we want to be, we are probably going to be repeating ourselves a little bit. And so we're going to be developing this content, and it needs to be stored somewhere. So, you know, Michael, Warren, whoever wants to pipe in, I'm interested in hearing.
I can certainly weigh in, and then let Michael weigh in after me. But you know, certainly it's a great question, because it brings in a couple of elements we've talked about this morning. One was, you know, do we always get the email address of the guest? And maybe we don't. But within our customers, where they generally are full service and do have other amenities, whether the guest books through the OTA channel or direct with the property or through their booking engine, they will get excited about their stay. And they will generally look at additional things that are available at the property that may not be presented on the OTA channels. So they will get to your website. So, you know, to this question of, there has to be initiatives to try and get the guest to the website, because from the website, you can present so much more and lead them down a different path that might give them more services, but at the same time boosting revenue. As an example, you know, the guests will come to the website, and in terms of content, you know, they may be on a certain package. And so maybe you've got a landing page for that package that talks about the benefits of that package and other things you can do. Or they can go to a generic page that just introduces the capabilities or the amenities of the property. And so from there, if you can lead them from there to, again, back to the booking engine to be able to book those services, then that's where your revenue boost is going to come from. And not to just look at that aspect of it, but don't forget, we still have the ability at that pre-check-in stage from a mobile app, you know, before they check in, where they go to check in online, that, you know, with our guest engagement, the guests can check in online, and at that check-in process, they can buy parking, make their dinner reservation, book a last-minute spa appointment before they arrive. So, you know, we've been talking about all this pre-arrival and you know, in advance, but you have up until the point they check in. You know, we're not talking about what happens when they're in-house and additional promotion we can do there. But up until that pre-arrival time, you have up until they're checking in to do those things. So I think, you know, your website is a great avenue. Your check-in process, your mobile check-in process is a great avenue. And then your landing pages that will describe additional amenities that might, you know, be in addition to the package you're on.
Michael Bennett, any of your thoughts on this? The topic of content management that's supporting these engagement touch points?
Yeah, we solve this with the digital asset management philosophy. So, you know, sort of a central repository of content that could be contextual or imagery, and then using technology, whether it's a website, CMS, or a CRM, to deliver it appropriately based on, you know, the preference and the personalization. So for example, in the CRM, you can have a pre-arrival template, and then based on personalization tags and filters, you know, that could go out any morning to 100 guests, that one template, and each email is unique to that individual guest. So no different when they click through the website, they get that same experience. So we kind of look at it holistically from an e-commerce standpoint. You know, I think there's a unique opportunity to
Michael Bennett, I think just
to then, you know, oh, did you lose me?
Just for a second there. I think you're back.
Oh, sorry. And then, then you have the challenges, right, of like WhatsApp or WeChat or just pure SMS, right? It's visual in certain regards, but you can't go as deep and wide. So being able to customize that content accordingly. But we think of it from a digital asset management standpoint, central repository, and then push it out to the appropriate technology. Excellent,
good. So we had some other questions that we were going to get to, but we were reaching the top of the hour, and we want to wind this up. So I want to go around the table and just, and give everyone a chance to give me 2 sentences to sort of like give the audience some advice on how to get the most out of their pre-arrival engagement plan. So Michael Edinger, if I can just start with you, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm going to try to condense it to 2 sentences, so I apologize. But yes, I think that it's very important that you have an updated website with all of the amenities and wonderful things that your hotel can do, and have the technology in place to help cultivate that, to help make the most of that from your guests, i.e. guest messaging or other tools in order to engage with your guests so that they're aware that you have also on top of your rooms. You also have all of these other wonderful things that you can do at your hotel to improve their stay.
Cool, thank you. Warren, can you weigh in on this?
Yeah, absolutely. In a couple of sentences, okay, I'll try.
I know it's the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So, certainly devising a pre-arrival plan that allows the guests to engage in stages with the property. I think it allows them to participate in designing their stay. I think it aids in the excitement of their arrival when they're involved, firsthand with this. And it encourages, pre-booking of ancillary revenues. At the same time, if you're cultivating that guest relationship, because the more they engage, the more they feel connected, I think you're going to get them more comfortable going direct to the property's website as opposed to going to the OTA for future things or other things. And I think that strategy will help certainly bring the guest in, and that's a way to boost some revenue.
Thank you, excellent. Michael Bennett, what's the takeaway for our audience?
Use a CRM, capture the data, build a plan, and revisit it often with the entire team on property. Have to engage all departments, revenue, ops, marketing. Be inclusive in your strategy, and it'll yield results.
A holistic approach. I agree. Daan de Bruijn, did I get it right there?
Yeah. Thanks a lot, ROOMDEX, for the webinar. A key to success really sits in being unique, I believe, and authentic. Guests can also feel that. And it's a positive thing to be different. When people want what you have, they must come to you to get it. So be a game changer, and the world has enough followers.
Thank you, Daan. And Jas, I'm going to wind up with you.
Yeah, I got not much more to add to that. I think I want to highlight what Warren and Michael Bennett said. I think, and Daan as well, the multiple touch points prior to arrival. So not 1 or 2 big emails, but simply a few that actually focus on one thing per email or per communication. And then I think what Michael Bennett brought really up is really important. Ensure that the entire hotel is involved. So not just revenue management or front desk, but also operations, housekeeping, and everybody else. So it becomes something the hotel as a team wants to deliver, and not just somebody who wants to just make more revenue, if for lack of a better explanation. So a holistic approach and multiple emails.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, I want to thank all of the panelists for joining us today. I think this was really helpful. Honestly, I think that we could probably kept on going on this. We had a few more questions we couldn't get to, but I want to let everyone know we have recorded this. We'll be uploading it on the ROOMDEX site, and you'll receive an email with a link as well. If you have any further questions on the topic or anything else, please feel free to reach out to us at info@roomdex.io. And also, I do want to mention to everyone that to look out for our April 13th webinar. We've invited 4 revenue management system companies to join us, Atomize, Pace, Ideas, and Duetto, to discuss all things regarding revenue management and RMS. So please put that on your calendar as well. You'll be most likely getting an email from us with that information. But thank you very much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.